Good morning, good people. Friday, the 20th of August. Nearly the end of August. What's that all about? Frightening. It'll be soon time in my world to welcome students back and welcome new students in. And that's an exciting part of the year. Very much so, very much so. It's good. When you work in academia, it's kind of quite funny, really, because the year takes on a different kind of feel. The year for most people's the calendar year, isn't it? But for people that work in, I suppose it's the same for teachers in primary and secondary education as well, and further education. The year is very different. There's a different meter to it. It's interesting. It's interesting. These things affect us, though, don't they? These things affect how we kind of go about our business. It's not what I was going to talk about, but I read a good while back. Read an interesting book. I think it was in When. I can't remember who wrote that. It'll come to me. Book called When, and the author was saying that when we do things is kind of really important, and that we tend to set ourselves new tasks and new goals and what have you at particular points in the year, and one of them is New Year's Day. We make New Year's resolutions, don't we? And it struck him, because it was a him. That's come back to me. It'll come back to me. It struck him that that's probably the worst time, particularly for people living in the UK, which is where I'm at, and where most people who listen to this are, I suppose. Particularly in the UK, because you've just been off for Christmas and New Year. You've probably had an extended break. So in some ways that fires you up with enthusiasm, but also it's fueled you with chocolate and turkey and all other manner of things. And the weather's cold and the weather's awful and the nights are dark. I mean, it might be different if you live in California, I suppose. It might be very different. But I think, we sometimes kind of, and this is the point of the book, this book, When we sometimes just don't pick the right time to kind of do things, do we? And if we pick better times, then it might be easier for us to do things. Daniel Pink, I've looked it up while I was talking, in my Obsidian vault. When, by Daniel Pink, and I think for me, what I've noticed is, since my year has shifted to be more like this kind of this academic year rather than calendar year, it has shifted kind of the way I do things, because I tend to do a lot of planning around about my birthday. I'm quite fortunate my birthday is July 27th. If you want to personally message me, I can send you my address for gifts and cards. So it's quite useful, because by July 27th, I've had a bit of a chilled period, if for no other reason than the weather's nice and the weather's sunny and that kind of thing. And I'm about to hit kind of, because of the nature of the work, it's when I take most of my holiday over the summer. So I'm about to have some time off, which means I can think clearly about the following year and set myself some targets and goals. So I think when we do things is really important, and sometimes we do things, and if we analyse them, we think, well, that's just the wrong time to be doing that. That's the wrong time to be embarking on something. The biggest, I've embarked on many nutritional modifications, or diets as we commonly call them. I've embarked on many of those on New Year's Day. Ridiculous time. The house is full of chocolate and leftover bits and pieces and things in the freezer that have no business being in the freezer in any normal part of the year. Frozen nibbly things and what have you. And so when you do things, sometimes we set ourselves up, don't we? And we can just see failure in front of us before we've even started. So I think when you do things is really important. Anyway, that's not what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about something that I wasn't going to talk about, then talk about the thing I was going to talk about. So now I need to talk about something else. The title of today, Who's on Your Team, isn't part of. But I wanted to say, I was talking the other day, wasn't it, about being distracted, by the monkey in your brain. I was talking about that, wasn't I? And I found that this was exactly what was happening. What was happening to me. I was thinking in terms of. Uh, I've got something to do. I'm writing this dissertation as I've mentioned a few times. I'm writing this dissertation at the minute, and it needs to be done by a particular time. I've left myself loads of time. This is the first thing to say. I've left myself loads of time, so I'm not unduly worried about this. To be honest, because I've left myself quite a bit of slippage because I've had a bit of luxury of time at the minute. Um, but last week, thinking about last week, the instant gratification monkey was the primary thing in my head taking control, and because I was trying to write and I was finding loads of other more interesting things to do, like finishing off the website that I've just launched. Editing, recording, and editing podcasts, which are just lots of fun. I'm not saying writing the dissertation isn't fun, but some of it isn't fun. Um, so what was happening was the instant gratification monkey was going, I know, but that website's going to look really cool. It's going to look really nice, and it's nearly finished, and you could do that, and that'd be fun because you'd be working with images and faffing about with layouts and stuff, which really appeals to me. You won't be writing about methodology and methods. Oh, yeah, I'll do that. The rational decision maker in my head was thinking, you need to get on with this, man. You need to get on with this. And one of the problems that I alluded to was the instant gratification monkey loves it when there aren't any deadlines. So yesterday I had a tutorial with my dissertation supervisor, and we mutually agreed, that I would have a kind of first draft written by the end of this month. So I could then ask him various questions about this first draft, and suddenly, because I had a deadline, suddenly yesterday I was making plans, and actually, in fact, here it is. It's here. Hey, look at this. It's here. Here's my plan, and it's translated into my calendar, and it's underlined in red for the things I'm going to tidy up today, because I've got about 3 hours this morning, and orange for the things that I really need to get onto after that, and then green for the things that I'm okay that they're not done, because I've got a task to do before I get to them. But that's really motivated me. Having that deadline's really motivated me, and I've broken things down to do them over the next kind of week and a half or so. I've managed to head off the instant gratification monkey just in time, before it gets to a kind of crisis point. So I just thought that was interesting. I was talking about it a few days back through this medium, and then it dawned on me that the very thing I'd been talking about, that I was encouraging you not to do, I'd been doing, and the power in setting that deadline, the power in saying, let's benchmark where we're at this point, but it needs to be complete, was really powerful. And after I'd written that list down and popped it in my calendar, I just felt so much better about the things that I need to do. Anyway, that wasn't. I should put a message on the thing, shouldn't I? Fast forward. If you want to hear what today is actually about, fast forward to 8 minutes 35. So I was listening to a podcast this morning, and on Audible, and it was somebody was talking to the woman who was narrating the podcast, was talking to Kelly Holmes. I don't think she's called Kelly Holmes anymore. She was calling herself Kelly Holmes because she was talking about when she won a gold medals. And it was really interesting. She was talking about the importance of being connected to people, and I've talked about that here before, and I've read lots about this, and it is really important to connect ourselves to others. And I think if lockdown over the last year has taught us something, taught us anything, it's taught us many things, I reckon. If it's taught us anything, it's taught us about the importance of those connections, hasn't it? And that we could still establish those connections through things like this, through Zoom and Teams and the like. But it's still just not the same as being sat next to somebody or talking to somebody in real life. And as things have opened up, I've had the chance to do that. I'm doing that this afternoon, and it's really nice. And she was saying that these people motivate you. These people you have around you motivate you they keep you focused, they keep you steady, they keep you on track, or hopefully they do. Because sometimes your social capital can derail you, I suppose. And the gears analogy that I use, and there's a blog on the website about that, selfcareshorts.com, talks about that. But generally, having people around us supporting us is generally a positive thing. And then reading a book called Scarcity at the minute as well, I might have mentioned this, and it was saying that actually people who are lonely, people who don't have those social connections, it impacts what they refer to as their cognitive bandwidth. It impacts their cognitive bandwidth, and they are, in inverted commas, less intelligent, or less cognitively able as a consequence of their loneliness. And that's really fascinating, isn't it? Just by being lonely. What an understatement. By being lonely, your cognitive ability is impacted. Your bandwidth is narrowed, because this being lonely and all the thoughts that conjures up actually restrict your cognitive faculties, I guess. So that's important. So being connected is really important. So that kind of got me thinking as I stopped the podcast, which I often do, and thought, right, well, who's on my team? And I think that's an interesting thing to think about, because when I say who's on your team, and I'm going to introduce this, I think, into the presentation I do, who's on your team, people will naturally start to think about teams at work, but it's not that, is it? There will be people who are on your team, the people who give you support. Who's your metaphoric physio? Yeah, who's your metaphoric coach? Who's your metaphoric massage therapist, if you like. I'm using those because those were the people who were around Kelly Holmes. So who are those people to you? Who are the people you go to kind of keep you on track, keep you right, who you can sound off to about stuff, who are going to support you, not fuel your emotional negative emotional drives, but actually help you manage them. Who are those people? And and I think it's broad, because to me, I think about when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, well, clearly Christine's on my team. Christine's my wife, and she's clearly on my team. Although sometimes it feels like she's not on my team, quite frankly. But that's part and parcel of being married. But she's on my team. We work together on things. And I've got two sons, and they're both on my team in different ways, because the conversations I have with them, the things that I do with them, the banter, the humour, that's all helpful in terms of my psychological well-being. And then there are my friends, and one thing that I think lockdown brought into focus, when I moved my contact with my friends, as many of us did, onto Zoom and Teams and various other Google Hangouts and the like. What I soon discovered was the conversations in those spaces, because they were different spaces, gravitated. It almost became a microcosm of those friendships, because they gravitated towards specific things. With some friends it was the plants we were growing. With some friends it was interesting stuff about music and films and that kind of stuff. With other friends it was about books that were being read, and it almost those it almost helped isolate, I suppose, in a sense, the kind of the uniqueness of each individual friendship. Although all of the friendships have some commonality around support, and I have generally the same sense of humour as my friends, and all those kind of things. There are similar interests across the piece, but there are unique things within each friend. So they're on my team because they help and support me with those individual things. But I was thinking, well, it's broader than that, isn't it? Because there are other people on my team, and I don't know Bruce Daisley, but he's on my team because I listen to his podcast on a regular basis, and I've read his book, and I read blogs that he writes, that kind of thing. So he's kind of on my team as well. So it's a bit broader than that, isn't it? It's broader than these are all people we connect with in different ways, and those connections kind of fuel our identity, but fuel the support network that that we engage in. And what I find interesting is as well is you've got to nourish that support network. You know, these things don't just happen by chance. You've got to put yourself out there as well, haven't you? In terms of those networks, and offer that support that you are in turn offered. So I just think as we approach the weekend, because today is Friday, the most important day of next week, and we're about to uh, come into a time when many of us will be taking a chance to rest and maybe connect with some of our team. Um, I just wondered who's on your team. And it's worth having to think about. And it's worth having to think about what you get from all of those different people. And that's not to say friendship's about what you can take. They're not, because the friendship will only be working if you give and take in largely kind of equal measures, I suppose. What do you get from these various people who are on your team, and how can you foster that team, and how can you foster new people on the team? That's really important as well. I have new people on my team because who've come onto my team over the last few years because our paths have crossed, and you feel a connection, so you kind of foster that connection, don't you? And lo and behold, you've got somebody else on your team now that challenges you and challenges you to think about things differently, and supports you in different ways. So we shouldn't underestimate the importance of these connections. And this last year, you probably don't need me to tell you this, but this last year has really kind of brought that into focus, hasn't it? In a big way. So yes, who's on your team, and what do they do for you? And if nothing else, it's an interesting kind of exercise and kind of reflection, I suppose, to kind of have a think about that, and to think about how you maybe think about as well how you support other people. What do other people get from you? I'm going to do that next. That's an interesting thing. So there you go. All right, nice to talk to you. And have good weekends. I often threaten to dip in on a weekend, and I might yet. If not, we'll see you next week. Take care. See you soon.